Do you notice that there's a difference between dissociation and compartmentalizing?
Maybe a level of consciousness. I think
Mhm.
it would depend on the person using those words, what they mean by it.
Mhm.
Um,
Because oh, sorry.
yeah, I was going to say, something that's come up for me in the last couple of years, really practicing as a somatic therapist, is I've really changed my relationship to dissociation. Whereas it was something I kind of considered a pathology and to be eradicated and to be avoided at all costs. I have a huge shift to that. I have so much respect for that now. Um, and recognizing how functional and helpful that can be has allowed me to see all the ways that we're doing something very similar. Like compartmentalizing might be, dissociation light. Like when I shelf something, and yes, I need to shelf things every single day as a part of my work. Almost everyone I know does. And how can I do that in a healthy way? I'm not saying never put anything on the shelf. I'm saying be aware of it and recognize that there's pros and cons to that. So the difference between compartmentalizing and dissociation, generally dissociation happens a little bit more unconsciously and it's fuzzier and not as clear. It's a little bit more of a limbic system response, whereas compartmentalization is a little bit more of a cognitive mental focus of I'm going to look here, I'm going to look there. Yeah, I don't know. Be interested to know if there's anyone else's
Mhm.
perspective on that.
Yeah, I think it's something to explore. I think within our own selves, how do we compartmentalize versus dissociate? I know for me, when I was in very dissociative state, just the sensation of my body, I wasn't feeling as much. I couldn't get a clear sense of my right side
Mhm.
versus my left side of my body. And compartmentalizing was as if it was more of an emotional, like you said, like I was going to take this whole circumstance and just close it up, and not almost like it's almost like closing up in a box, putting the key and throwing the key away, and just later when I can actually deal with it.
Mhm.
But the repercussions on my physical system on my physiology was quite noticeable.
Mhm.
But tapping into the things that have compartmentalized and the effects of doing that, whether it's short term or long term, I find we're a little bit more insidious and a little bit more difficult to kind of reopen and revisit because it was
Mhm.
so deep into my psyche. But the
Mhm.
dissociation is a little bit different. That was my experience with it, but I think receiving touch was primordial in starting to decipher uh which was which for me, but also how to hold it all together.
Mhm.
The more that I received the touch, the less fearful I was about receiving touch and having my body held. Uh, and that safety allowed for the compartments to actually come up and be like, oh, there's the treasure trove that I hid away. Where's
Mhm.
the key? Oh, it's over there. But it's being held in that safety, hands on, was is basically I got the most clarity from everything.
Mhm.
It was almost I mean, in combination with psychotherapy was very, 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 very powerful in healing PTSD for me, or at least, without the label, just how I, responded to chronic stress and finding those places of resourcefulness in my body was really huge.
So you're
So,
speaking about like what it's like as a client to
yeah.
really be like recovering places of dissociation,
Hmm.
things that were compartmentalized and kind of
Hmm.
blocked away.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But being a client receiving that makes it that I can hold that space for a
Mhm.
client.
How
So,
so?
because I know, well, I think that my body can feel into theirs as well. My system can recognize, oh, there's a place. I can feel what it feels like when they're dissociating because I can recognize that.
Mhm.
And so because my body, I can notice it sometimes, like I'm going to start dissociating. And that's the
Mhm.
thing. It took me years to start trusting that it's not just me that's dissociating. It's just my body is actually mirroring them. But I
Mhm.
find that the more that I practice being with myself, the more I'm noticing when I'm off kilter. But when
Mhm.
I'm off kilter, is it because of me or is it because I'm responding to
Mhm.
somebody
Mhm.
system? So
Yeah.
that
There's
is subtle.
it is subtle, and it's
Mhm,
a skill.
mhm.
The label I like to use on this skill is dual awareness,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, what is our skill around dual awareness? And having been trained in the Western medical system, where the skill was client-centered practice, to move from that back towards dual awareness and what that means. And you're
Mhm,
describing, how it is to be able to differentiate what's happening inside you versus what's happening inside your client, but be connected to both.
mm, at the same time.
And that's dual awareness.
Mhm,
You're not getting lost in your client's experience,
mhm.
and you're not disconnected from it.
Mm,
And so, go
and
ahead.
actually,
Uh-huh.
I've noticed that when I do notice that's happening and that my focus is very much in my hands or focus into the
Mhm.
person's system, and then
Mhm.
I take a minute and I can recognize that that's what's happening, and I feel into my own sense of interoception. Like this is where my body is. This is my contour. I like to feel my spine and my pelvis on the seat. Almost every time the person takes a deep breath and then they can just relax into it. There's
Mhm.
just something about our own ability to return to ourselves that creates a sense of peace in somebody
Mhm.
on our table. And I can see it just through by their breathing changes.
Mhm. Mhm.
Mhm, mhm.
Yeah, it's because we're part of the same system. When we're in
Exactly.
there in the room together, there's
Mhm,
not just one system there. There's
mhm.
two.
And I think that's part of the whole missing. One of the things that's missing that we know that is missing, but sometimes we don't know what it is that
Mhm.
as
Mhm.
therapists, we don't realize that it's not just about them. It's not just about us, but there's a thing, I think within the therapeutic relationships, there's so much more than just a therapeutic relationship that we're
Mhm.
not made aware of. It's that it's the ability of two systems meeting
Mhm.
and becoming or not becoming coherent.
Mhm.
There's this just as we're meeting and just there's this unspoken thing. And I think that that's kind of what makes a lot of people really tired in this profession is not knowing that this is actually happening and having any training or skill on how to recognize that.